Here's something strange about the F-35. It's one of the most advanced fighter jets ever built. But it isn't particularly fast. Its top speed is around Mach 1.6. An F-16, a fighter that first flew more than 50 years ago, can reach around Mach 2. So how does that make sense? How can the newer aircraft be slower but still be considered more advanced? Well, because speed was never really the point of the F-35. To understand this aircraft, you have to look at what modern air combat has become. Fighter pilot today isn't just looking for another aircraft in the sky. There could be enemy fighters ahead, surface-to-air missiles below, radars operating somewhere in the area, and friendly aircraft sending information from completely different directions. And somehow the pilot has to understand all of that while flying the aircraft. The F-35 was designed around that problem. It has a powerful radar, infrared sensors, an electronic warfare system, cameras around the aircraft, and several ways of receiving information from other platforms. But having a lot of sensors isn't the interesting part. The interesting part is what the aircraft does with all that information. Imagine the radar detects an aircraft ahead. At the same time, another sensor picks up an electronic signal from that direction. Maybe another F-35 is also tracking something in the same area. Instead of forcing the pilot to look at all of those things separately and figure out whether they're connected, the F-35 tries to combine that information into one picture. That's sensor fusion. And no, sensor fusion itself isn't unique to the F-35. Other modern fighters can do it too. What matters here is that the F-35 was designed around this kind of integration from the beginning. The radar isn't really meant to be treated as one separate system. Neither is the electronic warfare equipment. Neither are the infrared sensors. They're supposed to work together. And that also explains another major part of the aircraft: stealth. Now, stealth doesn't make the F-35 invisible. That's probably the biggest misconception about these aircraft. A radar can potentially detect a stealth aircraft. The goal is to make that detection more difficult, and especially to make the aircraft harder to track well enough to actually attack. Because knowing that something is somewhere over there isn't enough. A weapon system needs much more accurate information. It needs to find the aircraft, keep track of it, and build a good enough picture to engage it. The F-35 is designed to make that entire process harder. That affects almost everything about the aircraft. Its shape, the materials used on it, the way parts of the aircraft fit together, even where it carries its weapons. During missions where stealth is important, the F-35 can carry weapons inside the aircraft instead of hanging them under the wings. And there's an interesting trade-off here. If stealth becomes less important, the F-35 can also carry weapons externally, so you can increase the amount of weapons it carries, but you sacrifice some of the low observable advantage. And I think that's actually a good example of how the F-35 was designed. It isn't trying to maximize one number. It's trying to give the pilot different options depending on the mission. But there's one part of the F-35 that I think explains the aircraft better than anything else. It doesn't necessarily have to be the one that fires the weapon. Say an F-35 detects something. It identifies the target and tracks it. That information can then be shared. Another aircraft may be in a better position to attack, or a ship, or a ground-based system. So the F-35 can be useful even without firing anything itself. And that changes the way you should think about a fighter jet. We usually imagine a fighter operating almost like an individual hunter. It finds a target, it attacks it. Then it moves on. But modern militaries increasingly want aircraft, ships, and ground systems to work together. One platform might find the target. Another might have the best weapon to destroy it. The important part is getting the information from one to the other. And the F-35 was built with that kind of battlefield in mind. That's really where the difference becomes clear. Take something like the F-16. The F-16 is still an extremely capable fighter, especially in its modern versions. But its basic design comes from the 1970s. Over the decades, new radars, weapons, targeting pods, computers, and electronic warfare systems were added to it. The aircraft evolved. With the F-35, many of those capabilities were part of the plan from the very beginning. That's why calling the F-35 simply a replacement for the F-16 doesn't really explain what changed. It's not just a newer fighter with a better radar and newer missiles. The whole philosophy is different. And of course, that philosophy comes with problems. The F-35 is incredibly complicated. The program has faced delays, high costs, maintenance problems, and difficult software development. And in a way, that's connected to the same thing that makes the aircraft interesting. When you try to make this many systems work together, you also create something that is much harder to build, maintain, and upgrade. So the F-35 definitely isn't some perfect fighter that does everything better than every other aircraft. That isn't the point. The point is that fighter aircraft are being asked to do something different now. Speed still matters. Maneuverability still matters. Weapons still matter. But information has become part of the fight too. Knowing what is around you, understanding what is a threat, sharing that information, and doing all of that while making it harder for the enemy to do the same thing to you. That's really what the F-35 was built around. So maybe the easiest way to explain the aircraft is this. The F-35 isn't remarkable because it flies faster than the fighters that came before it. It doesn't. It's remarkable because it was designed to know more about the fight happening around it. And in modern air combat, that can be just as important as how fast you can fly.